Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Built Heritage Committee meeting of April 14th, 2026. I'd like to call the members to order. This hybrid meeting is being facilitated through Zoom and is being held on the traditional territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe Nation, the original custodians of the unceded land in which the City of Ottawa is located. We extend our respect to all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples for their valuable past and present contributions to this land. Since this meeting of this committee is being streamed live on the Ottawa City Council YouTube channel, I'd like to remind participants to please keep your microphones muted until I call upon you to speak. For those participating here in the committee room, please use the microphone in front of you and keep your computer muted. I will provide each committee member with the opportunity to ask questions or comment on each item in the order in which they raise their hand in Zoom. For panelists, the raise hand option is found at the bottom of the participants list. For those calling in, press *9 to raise your hand. The committee coordinator and I will be watching for those cues. Members are also reminded to submit any motions, visual supports, or declarations of interest in writing to the coordinator at their earliest opportunity. Although the deadlines have passed for residents to register to speak and to provide written submissions to this committee, they still can make written submissions to council. If you have technical difficulty signing into the meeting, please contact the committee coordinator. A reminder that if participants are having technical issues, they can always use the backup telephone number provided by the coordinator. We did receive regrets from member Madigan. I'll ask the committee coordinator to call the roll.
Councillor Kelly.
Present.
Councillor Leeper.
Good morning.
Councillor Troster.
Here.
Member Barnes. Member Legault.
Present.
Member Madigan. Member Quinn. Vice Chair Plant.
Hello.
And Chair King.
Here.
You have quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you so much. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest to be declared? Seeing none. Confirmation of minutes. Are the minutes of the Built Heritage Committee meeting of March 10th confirmed? Confirmed. Thank you. So we have registered speakers for all of the substantive business on our agenda. So we will begin the meeting with considering the heritage permit for 267 O'Connor Street.
Thank you, Chair. This is a heritage permit application for 267 O'Connor Street, which is located in the Centretown Heritage Conservation District, an HCD. It's designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act. Next slide. The property is located on the east side of O'Connor Street between McLaren and Gilmore. The site's currently occupied by a 6-story office building constructed around 1958, which is a non-contributing building in the HCD. The demolition of the existing building was approved in May 2024. The remainder of the site is a surface parking lot. There's 2 contributing buildings directly to the east, and to the south is 330 Gilmore, the former Ottawa Board of Education building. That building is currently vacant and is on the Heritage Watch list. Excuse me. Next slide. The proposed development is to construct 2 landmark buildings. The tower to the north is 27 stories and the tower to the south is 25 stories. The development includes 513 residential units, commercial uses at grade along O'Connor, 4 levels of underground parking, and an outdoor space which will operate as a privately owned public space, which is known as a POPS. Next slide. Some background on the planning framework. Like I mentioned, these are considered landmark buildings, which permit building heights of up to 27 stories, subject to specific criteria, which is established in the secondary plan for the area. It is also contemplated in the HCD plan. Staff have determined that this proposal meets those criteria. As part of the application, the applicant followed the council-approved public engagement strategy. The proposal also requires an official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment. The proposal has undergone 3 sessions with the special design review panel, which was comprised of expert design professionals. It is the 4th iteration of the proposal, and the design has undergone significant revision. The application is also subject to site plan control, and as part of site plan control, there will be a requirement for an additional session with the city's urban design review panel. Next slide. Heritage staff have determined that the proposal meets the Centertown HCD plan for the following reasons. The 4-story podiums, which are clad in red brick, reflect the material palette and the historic scale of the HCD. It provides an appropriate transition using setbacks and stepbacks to the contributing buildings to the east. The facades have been articulated, as you can see in the image here, using vertical divisions through the window patterns and balconies along McLaren and Gilmore Street to reflect the residential character of those east-west streets in Centertown. The proposal balances compatible design with contemporary expression. The lower floors relate to the historic context, while the more contemporary upper stories are defined by the distinct change in materials from masonry to glazing and the articulated tower breaks on the 4th and 9th story. The proposal incorporates design elements that are seen in the neighboring properties, such as arched windows and defined cornice lines. Next slide. The proposed landscape plan meets the Heritage Conservation District plan as well. It proposes central open space with new plantings, wood benches, raised planters, and curved concrete walls. There will be a cross-site access in the form of a public pathway that connects McLaren and Gilmore Street. New street tree plantings are proposed. So next slide. So the staff recommendation is to approve the heritage permit subject to conditions, which I'll talk about in a minute, delegate authority for minor design changes to heritage planning staff, and issue the permit with a 6-year expiry date, which is a bit longer than normal, and that's due to the complexity of the project as well as the additional planning approvals required. Next slide, please. The conditions of approval are the approval of the Associated Planning Act applications, the submission of an engineering memo outlining construction protections for nearby heritage properties, the applicant working with the heritage planning staff to explore conservation of the relief sculpture on the existing building and shown in the photo here, approval of the final materials by heritage staff, and submission of the building permit drawings in advance of submission. Next slide. So in conclusion, staff are recommending approval of the application. It meets the Centertown HCD plan and has been designed to be compatible with the neighboring buildings. It replaces a non-contributing building and surface parking lot with a mixed-use development, and it achieves heritage conservation and intensification goals. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the presentation. We did receive correspondence on this file from Centertown Community Association, as well as the Heritage Advocacy Committee for Heritage Ottawa. We do have a number of delegations, starting with Erwin Dreesen. And I think we are just promoting him now online. And we're just awaiting promotion. And once Mr. Dreesen is promoted, you'll just need to unmute.
Good morning. I am a participant, but I don't see myself on screen yet.
We can hear you, and if you can put yourself or turn on your video. Perfect. And we've reset the clock, so you can begin. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair and members of committee. I have one comment and one request. The comment is that the Special Design Review Panel repeatedly requested of the applicant to consider the heritage context of the proposed development, specifically how the towers would relate to the former OBE complex at 330 Gilmore Street. The applicant has never responded to this request. On the contrary, it has assumed the complex away by taking it as a given that an 8-story building would take its place. Such a building was approved in December 2008, but nothing further has happened there since, except further deterioration of the complex. I'm disappointed that the Heritage Staff report makes no mention of this failure to respond to a request from the Special Design Review Panel. My request to you is about the modern Madonna, which the staff presentation just mentioned. It's a relief sculpture on the upper story of the northwest corner of the doctor's building, the building that is to be demolished. And I refer you to page 19 of the staff report for a close-up picture. The conditions of approval state only that the applicant is to work with heritage planning staff to, quote, explore the feasibility of conserving the relief structure, end quote. Surely, the city can do better than that. It could require that the sculpture be preserved and be integrated in the new development. And I request that this committee do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your delegation. Are there any questions for Mr. Dreesen? Yes, you have a question from Councillor Leeper.
Thanks, Erwin, and I'm going to give that careful consideration over the next few minutes. I'm just curious, do you know what that relief sculpture represents?
It looks like it represents a nurse or someone. It's called the modern Madonna. So someone in the healthcare sector taking care of another individual. It's not. It's sort of a very modern, stylized picture. So that's all I know. And
Okay.
I understand that staff has looked into the source of it, and it seems they haven't come up with anything yet, and I haven't seen anything. And unfortunately, Robert Smythe is no longer with us. Undoubtedly, he would be able to tell us what the origin of this sculpture is. But it is there, and from all the looks of it, from way up high, it looks very much worth preserving.
It's very striking. I was looking at that when I was reading through the report. Thank you very much. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you so much. Seeing no other questions, thank you, Mr. Dreesen, for appearing before us today. Our next delegation is Martin Barclay. Thank you for joining us this morning, and you just need to press the button and then you'll have 5 minutes.
Is that better?
Excellent.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Martin Barclay. I'm the Vice President of the Centertown Community Association and the co-chair of the Planning Committee. I've sat through a number of iterations of this building over the past number of years. I think the main reason I'm here today is to talk about this being a heritage designation, and specifically the city's use of the word iconic. In order for this building to qualify in the heritage area that it's in, it needs to be iconic. There is no definition anywhere in the documents as to what constitutes iconic. So the developer has self-designated itself as iconic. This is a problem. It's a problem for a number of reasons. They've gone through a number of different ways of looking at this building, but at every turn in the community consultation process, they've used this iconic status to say that other planning rules do not apply because it is iconic. If we don't have a definition for this, and this is one of the first of the buildings to be built under this heritage designation, we run the risk of simply saying iconic is as iconic does. And I think that's a problem for the city. It's a problem definitely for the neighborhood. I also note that where the considerations of iconic and it needing to meet other conditions of this, there is a leadership in energy efficiency and green initiatives. Nothing in this building has met any of those. They've only met the minimum threshold of meeting the planning requirements. They're not showing leadership. There is no green roof. There are no solar panels. They are not using higher level, more energy efficient material for the construction. They are merely meeting the construction code. I guess I'm here today to say we could do better. It isn't only that there are two buildings on a site that was originally considered for one. The original presentation was for a single tower. The Urban Development Institute recommended that. We're now at a stage where we have two very large buildings on the same lot and a builder that is not imaginative and certainly not particularly sensitive to the energy efficient and self-sustaining nature, and they need to build a neighborhood that is consistent with the heritage around it. We have other examples across the street, also on O'Connor, where a setback has been used more effectively without a massive form on the bottom. The final thing that I'd say is that this builder has used this iconic and status as landmark to excuse many of the things that they might have done for either soft green space, use of trees, public access, simply by saying, since it's iconic, none of these things apply. They've increased the percentage that is open to the public from 30 to 40 after a series of letters and a number of presentations. But I still feel this building falls short of what could be done. There is no green initiative. There is no green status in this building. It merely meets the legal requirements of construction. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. You do have a question from Councillor Troster.
Hi, Martin. Thanks
Hi
so
there.
much for being here. Yeah, I've also seen multiple iterations of this building in the last 4 years. I will say, I do think the community had a big impact on increasing that outdoor public space. There was an iteration of this plan where the public space was actually like an enclosed indoor room, and that made no sense to me. So, good job in that regard. So is it your contention that if a building in a heritage zone is gonna apply for the kind of height that they're asking for, that the architecture should be more of a landmark?
I think it's more of the architecture than the height. My understanding is that the Ontario Municipal Board has already ruled on height designations and that it meets the criteria under that. So I think, being opposed to that is kind of counterproductive.
Okay.
So I'm more concerned about the energy efficiency, the green aspect, and the heritage aspect in terms of fitting in with the buildings that surround it.
Yeah. I mean, it still is a lot of change for that area. It will be the tallest building in the surrounding area, and Centertown's already taking a lot of density. And I agree with you. I think the landmark status is really nebulous. We've seen this with other buildings where, it's very subjective and I'm not sure who ultimately makes that final call. But the Urban Design Review Panel certainly helps nudge the building in a different direction. So anyway, I really appreciate your feedback. I know this is a tough one, and I've heard a lot about this property, and we'll probably hear a lot about it tomorrow at Planning Committee too. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your contribution this morning. I see no other questions. So we will move to our next delegation, who is Hunter McGill.
Good morning, Chair. Thank you very much. Good morning, committee members. Thank you for letting us slide in with a rather late notification to you to request your time. You will have received, I hope, correspondence from Heritage Ottawa, which touches on a range of the issues that you are dealing with this morning. Our concern, as you might well expect, is very much with the preservation of the principles of the Heritage Character District in which this proposal is cited. We've mentioned a number of the factors of particular concern to us, largely from a design and planning standpoint. We think that the Centertown Citizens Association, in their submission to you, have raised a number of very important points. So we won't go over them. We happen to feel that they're all very pertinent to your considerations. Of particular interest to us, among other issues, is the proposal to include a POPs, a privately owned public space, in the design. We haven't seen many, if more than perhaps a bare handful, of these types of approaches to design. Our view is that this perhaps could be treated, and I believe that the special design review panel also touched on this, that this particular element of the design could have been handled in a much more sensitive and thoughtful and appropriate way. Speaking personally, I had an opportunity to look at POPs in several North American cities, particularly San Francisco. This is not, to my perspective, a particularly inviting POPs. And the fact that it is situated between two very tall towers suggests that, in fact, that there are a number of important factors which have really got to be taken into consideration, not the least of which would be the wind effect, which we know is a factor of tall towers. We also suggest that the committee give consideration to factors associated with upkeep, access, in the treatment and the presentation to the public of the POPs. The other element of concern to Heritage Ottawa is the overall size of the building, its crowding of the site. It's very close to the lot line. The setback requested is very minimal, and that does not appeal if one looks at the other structures on the same street and nearby. There are much more appropriate examples of appropriate setback and height and so on. As the previous speaker mentioned, there is also the significant concern of the precedent-setting nature of approval for this. And finally, Mr. Chairman, committee members, surely a building is not a landmark building or an iconic building just because the proponent deems it to be so. I don't think that that's really a particularly useful approach. And recognizing, as was suggested a moment or two ago, in a lot of cases, decisions of that nature as to what is landmark iconic are extremely difficult, but they should go beyond just the label, the designation that is given by the organization, which is requesting your authority and your approval to go ahead. In conclusion, if the committee is interested in thinking about an interesting example, in my personal view, a very appropriate example of landmark building, it just needs to go one block to the east and examine the Public Service Alliance of Canada headquarters building, which dates back to 1968, and which has stood the test of time and is a very striking example of good planning and good architecture. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Councillor Troster.
Thank you, Hunter. I used to work in that building, so I can tell you it's also very cool from the inside. Thank you for your contribution. What do you think of the podium on this building, though? Because it actually reminded me of the PSAC building, the use of the brick and some of the size of the windows. No? I see your face.
I will respond. maybe the minutes wouldn't catch facial gestures.
Okay.
No, it's very difficult to understand the purpose of the podium, except to perhaps offer a gesture in the direction of different materials
Okay.
for that section of the building. But
Okay.
it does not, to a non-specialist like me, it doesn't appear to really offer anything.
Okay. Yeah, I always find when we discuss the actual design and architecture of a building, it is very subjective, but I really appreciate your feedback and I appreciate your concerns. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your delegation. I don't see any further questions, so thank you so much. Our next delegate is Kyle Kazda on behalf of the development team. And I see other members of the team are also joining you as well. Because we do have John Stewart, Timothy Bede, and Patrick Bison also registered on behalf of the applicant team. Thank you so much for joining us. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. We do have a presentation prepared, but if the committee would prefer, we can just answer questions. I feel like Anne's presentation quite well covered what we're proposing.
Absolutely.
Okay, then if anyone has any questions, please go ahead.
Councilor Lieber.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, I'm trying to find it in the report here. Let me pull it up. So one of the conditions for the approval is that the applicant is working with the heritage planning staff to explore the feasibility of conserving the relief sculpture on the upper story of the existing building. I have significant sympathy for where Irwin is coming. This shouldn't be a consideration. Is there anything stopping you from conserving the relief structure?
Yes, thank you for the question. Yes. So I think there's two components to this. The first is the historical significance of that sculpture. There's not a lot of information available as to its origins. So it's not necessarily a defining component of the building or necessarily of extreme significance to the area. Having said that, we do realize its relevance to the historic use of the building and what it would have been in the 50s and 60s when this building was first constructed and later expanded. So that's part of the reason why we're considering its feasibility of retention. The other is we have not investigated whether or not it could be removed from the building, which would be something we would undertake during site plan or prior to demolition of the building. During site plan, we would also consider where in the landscape plan or elsewhere in the community we could locate the structure, which is why we've determined to work together at site plan on its conservation.
Would you have any strong objection if we were to modify that condition C to be amended to read the applicant conserving the relief structure in a manner satisfactory to heritage planning staff?
I think that's appropriate. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. And I do know that you have a presentation. So if you want to proceed with that, we can put the PowerPoint back on the screen.
Okay, we'll do so. Thank you.
Perfect. So of course, proceed.
Thank you. Good morning and thank you very much. The development at 267 O'Connor Street represents a well-conceived reuse of the property with buildings that provide visual porosity at ground level and a generous public accessible site. Next slide, please. This is an appropriate location for a landmark building that will enhance the identity of Centertown, contribute to meaningful to the public realm, and address the city's growing need for housing. Next slide, please. With regard to the demolition of the building, the property as part of the Centertown Heritage Conservation District was considered a non-contributing resource, and a demolition permit was issued in 2024. Just picking up on the mother and child modernist element. I don't think anybody's had a really good ability to get up and have a good look at the site. It's stainless steel, it's finishes, but it'll depend to the extent to which its condition. So I think it's a positive that we were able to do this, and it'll take a bit of time before there's an answer for it. Next slide, please. The new development incorporates key heritage attributes found within the district, including setbacks, a facade cadence reminiscent of the former lot divisions, high-quality materials and finishes, a vintage specific color palette, and the reintroduction of street trees alongside of public amenity spaces. The focus in terms of grounding it within the area has been addressing the podium and the details of the podium. And I think some of the comments that came out earlier, the efforts have been put forward to capture some of that in terms of materials and color palette. In terms of context, next slide, please. The project addresses the public realm, interfaces with the surrounding building stock, and introduces needed green space in the area. The cross-site access and location of the POPs nestled between the two towers and fronting onto O'Connor creates a sunny, inviting open space. Centertown and this part of Centertown will benefit from the treatment. The main pedestrian, next slide, sorry. The main pedestrian areas are linked with a connection to the sidewalks for transparency, commercial scale. Glazing is provided on the ground floor. Mid-block public access between McLaren and Gilmore opens the site up, and loading services and utilities are screened from views. Access to the residences from the side streets helps to reestablish the hierarchy of east and west streets. This is one of the interesting is the east and west streets are there in terms of relating to O'Connor. They're more residential in scale, and part of this effort was to recapture or retain that character. The two buildings, next slide, please. The two buildings are point towers with distinctive bases, middles, and tops organized to be viewed all around. The placement on the site is appropriate given the lot orientation. Next slide. The masonry podiums ground the proposed development and reference back to the original lots, materials, and color palette, and provide context to the neighboring properties. The brick podiums and defining datum lines help to reference existing buildings. Next slide, please. The tower forms are offset from one another, reducing the overlapping of views. The treatment of the upper floors is simple, consisting of a grid that is animated by adjusting the thickness of panels and piers. Materials and finishes for the body of the building are intended to be light. The distinct basket weave of the North Tower adds interest, with the tops creating an architectural treatment on the skyline. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Are there any questions? Councillor Leeper.
Just one to satisfy my own curiosity. On page 8 of the report, it speaks about the design elements and notes that the proposal incorporates red brick masonry repetitive arches interspersed with a regular spaced orthogonal fenestration pattern. So I think orthogonal fenestration would be a great album name, but yeah, what is orthogonal fenestration?
Sorry,
That's okay. Maybe Patrick,
Thank you. I think the orthogonal fenestration just speaks to the rhythm of fenestration that you would normally see in the low-rise red brick homes that characterize the neighborhood. So we were trying to recreate that smaller window pattern in the podium.
sorry, I'm trying to relate the word orthogonal to that. I know the word
Orthogonal, straight,
fenestration,
non-arched.
not arched.
Yeah.
Square or
Square.
rectangle.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Thank you. This committee is often fascinating. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I don't see any other hands. Oh, Member Quinn.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if these questions have to be specifically for John, or can anybody there?
Or yeah, the entire
Thank you. Okay, I just would like to come back to the podium. Excuse me. I have a question about the window designs. All the windows seem to be sort of set back with I don't know if we can bring up the slide that shows what I'm talking about. Is that possible?
I think we will try to pull up the presentation for you.
Yeah, they seem to be, there's each window is quite deeply set back, which is in my understanding of center town architecture. I don't see how that relates to anything in the surrounding context. So I just was wondering how that has been interpreted to be sensitive to, and speaking to the buildings that have been identified in particular in the report as examples of what this podium is relating to. Yes, thank you very much. So are you aware, you know what I'm talking about here? You look at the columns separating the windows, the pattern, the fenestration pattern, both in terms of the arched windows and the square and rectangular windows. What's the rationale for that?
So I'm speaking on behalf of our partners also, which is UN Studio out of Amsterdam. But I think the intent to have some recess to the apertures, the windows, was to give additional character to the facade of the building. I think there's a level of latitude that we were looking at to express the building in a slightly more contemporary fashion while keeping some of the heritage language of the red masonry of the neighborhood. So the pushing back of the windows is really I'll call it an architectural expression rather than an adherence to the local architectural language of the Heritage District.
Okay, thank you. But in a way, it's actually, I find a distraction. It detracts from what's going on around. And similarly, the series of arched windows at the ground level, there's too many. There are too many windows. They're too big for it to really relate to what it's trying to achieve. If we read the Commonwealth report, which is the justification for the design and how it does relate to the Heritage Conservation District buildings in the surrounding area, immediate area. This treatment actually it doesn't do it in my opinion, and I've done a fair amount of this. I think it went in the wrong direction. So I'm surprised. I was very surprised to see it. And similarly, the series of arched access points in the main level sort of reminded me of sort of a 1970s mini mall or something. So I have to say it was really, I was geared up for something really interesting, and I have to share with you that I find this disappointing, and that there's opportunity to do something more that does in fact relate to the conservation district. And we're hearing from the community, and they want to see that. That's important for the consistency of their area. So anyway, there's some feedback, and I don't know if it's too late to go and do anything to address those concerns. And we've heard about them this morning. I was not visible on the screen, but I was participating in the meeting. So I did hear all of the witness all of the presentations so far. So yeah, I'm just a little surprised well, your explanation is not satisfactory and in my view. So thank you. But anyway, I don't know if it's too late, but it'd be nice to see something done there.
So thank you for the feedback. This has been an iterative process balancing two different planning documents, which depending on the subjective opinion of the reader could be seen as conflicting. We have the Centertown landmark building policies, which reach for iconic architecture. And then we have the Centertown HCD plan, which pulls the architecture more to relate and complement the existing built form. So this is what we've resolved as being a balance between these policies. And it's also underwent the review of 3 different special design review panel sessions, which have provided recommendations, and those recommendations were incorporated into the current design. So I think this is really what we've struck as a balance between many policies. But we hear your feedback and we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. You also have questions from Councillor Troster.
Hi there. Thanks for being here. So you've heard from the community. They don't think the building meets the landmark policy. I invite you to just say in a few words why you think it does.
Thank you. Tim, I see you're online, so maybe I'll start, and if you have anything to add, you can jump in.
Definitely.
It's our opinion that it meets the landmark building policy as a result of the extensive public consultation that we've undertaken. This consultation process was approved by council back in 2020, and it's included over 40 touch points with various stakeholders. We've undertaken 3 pretty significant variations of the design to get to this proposal. And we have the support of the Special Design Review Panel and city staff, both for having completed the consultation process and ending up with the design that is felt to meet the landmark policies. There's some fairly objective requirements under the policy as well, which you'll see tomorrow in the Planning and Housing Committee. But in terms of how the current application meets the landmark policy in a built heritage perspective, I think the completion and adoption of recommendations under the consultation process demonstrates that.
Thank you. And I think Member Legault had her hand up. I'm not sure. Okay. No questions from Member Legault. I don't see any other questions for you. So thank you so much for your presentation and for your delegation this morning. We now move to questions for staff. But before we do, I believe that Councillor Leeper had an amending motion to the report.
I do. Thank you, Chair. So with respect to Mr. Dreesen's intervention, I'd like to move, whereas the report recommendation that approval be conditional upon the applicant working with heritage planning staff to explore the feasibility of conserving the relief structure or sculpture on the upper story of the existing building. And whereas the relief sculpture is worthy of conservation as a heritage and cultural asset, therefore be it resolved that the recommended condition C be amended to read the applicant conserving the relief sculpture in a manner satisfactory to heritage planning staff. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you so much. Now, questions to staff. Councillor Troster.
Hi, thanks. I know this file's been a very long time coming. There have been many iterations. The concept of a landmark building and iconic architecture is very subjective, and it's a policy that really only exists in certain, I believe, in the Downtown Transact, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, correct-ish?
That's correct, in the secondary plan for this area.
Right. And the landmark policy allows exceptions to some other policies, including heritage considerations. So I'm just wondering, from your perspective, what do you think? I mean, what factors did you take into account in determining that you thought this building applied to the landmark policy?
Through you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Trosser. I think the way we looked at it is iconic architecture is sort of, it's the goal. And the way the policy is set up to establish that is through a rigorous architectural review process. So like we've heard, the proposal went through many iterations. It went to the special design review panel 3 times. And that panel was composed of Canadian and international design experts. And the proposal, for the most part, has responded to the key recommendations in its most recent iteration of that design review panel. They also used a local architect, but partnered with an international architect from Amsterdam. And they responded to staff concerns and comments as well. They listened to feedback from heritage planning, urban design, development review staff. So in our opinion, it has gotten there. In the application that's in front of you today, we looked at it from a heritage lens. So we looked at it for compatibility with the district and balancing that contemporary architecture at the same time. So on the slide that you saw and in my report, where I go through the points of why we think it meets it, it's sort of the key ones are that the height is contemplated, both in the secondary plan and HCD. It's a demolition of a non-contributing building, but they're going to submit a demolition plan that speaks to sort of salvage and reuse of material. And then it's those design sensitivities in terms of transition, the design elements that were incorporated, the podium height and scale. And so those were the elements that we thought from our perspective brought it to that, to meet those landmark policies.
Thank you so much, Councillor Leeper.
Thank you very much, Chair. I feel like I'm back in 2020 a bit with the Mizrahi building, where it was required to have landmark status. The Ontario Municipal Board told us and partially defined, I guess, landmark status as a wow factor. I don't know if that OMB decision was helpful at all in advancing our understanding of what landmark architecture is, or is it just going to be very subjective each and every time?
Through you, Chair, that's a good question, Councillor Leeper. And I think the one thing to keep in mind is it's a wow factor also in a heritage conservation district. So it's the balance of the two that really has to get sort of struck here. So we look at it from podium height, pedestrian level, public realm experience, and then that contemporary expression up above. But you're correct, there's no definition of a wow factor in any planning document that I've seen. But I think looking at the most recent recommendations from the SDRP and from feedback from staff, we do feel like they've really addressed a lot of those key components in their design.
Okay, thank you.
Member Legault.
Yes, I'd just like to add a comment that I actually, I like this design. I think it strikes a good balance, a contemporary balance with the podium, using the red brick. And I think, you know, it's hard. Everyone's got different opinions when it comes to contemporary interventions. And there are certainly things that everyone would change with every design, but I think that this works. And I think you guys did a good job of finding that balance between all those different elements. So thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, I just wanted to make a few comments. I note that heritage staff who were initially unable to support earlier versions of this proposal over many years are now recommending approval. That shift is meaningful. It reflects genuine design responsiveness by the applicant over 5 years of iteration. Staff have been clear, however, that the approval is conditional. The 5 conditions in document 9 are not minor formalities. They include material selection approval, engineering protection for surrounding heritage buildings, and the question of the sculpture. And I obviously would encourage members to probe these conditions carefully. After a careful review of the Heritage Impact Assessment, the staff report, and the 5-year design record before us, I believe that the application is attempting to be more thoughtful. It's trying to ensure that the heritage planning process works through the HCD framework the way it's designed to be supported. The proposal obviously is not without tension, and I think we're hearing that today about the subjective nature of design. And we have to acknowledge that no landmark building in a heritage district can be without any tension. But the design has definitely evolved substantially in response to legitimate heritage concerns, and heritage staff have concluded that it now meets the applicable policies and guidelines. For that reason, I do support the recommendations to approve with the 5 conditions as proposed. I am also encouraged by the motion brought to committee around the relief sculpture by Councillor Leeper to strengthen conditions that have the merit that require the strengthening. And I think that particularly does include the sculpture. Finally, I want to be clear that approval of this heritage permit is the beginning of a process, not the end. A site plan control application will follow, and the urban design review panel will have another opportunity to review the refined design. And we know that many will be watching, people around this table with interest. And of course, the ward councillor will be watching the project closely through every stage and continuing to consult with the community at every stage. So I do want to thank heritage staff, the applicant team, and most importantly, the community who participated in this process for their diligence and their commitment to providing maximal input into this application. So we have 2 items before us. The motion presented by Councillor Leeper on the relief sculpture. Is that motion carried?
Carried.
Sorry, Member Barnes.
Mr. Chair, I wanted to make a couple of comments on the report as amended. I think really that heritage staff have wasted their time in looking at this application. The properties on McLaren, the property on Gilmore, the property across the street being the public school board, the iconic property across the street, across O'Connor at Gilmore, none of which have influenced or are reflected in this design in any way other than the material. And the material is not a heritage issue. It's a development issue. It's a Centertown issue. It would have been something that came up in the development of the community association position. Community association, of course, approved of the development of iconic buildings for basically because they managed to get the 35-foot height limit east of Elgin, and therefore went along with the iconic buildings. This does kind of fit into the iconic building category. You know, it's got a little bit of a twist and a little bit of an angle to it. And but the heritage, like there's no reason why this building is before us. There's no amendment that relates to the building, except I guess Councillor Leeper's recommendation related to the old building, that we should keep a piece of it. But this is, yeah, and you'll see later as you consider my amendment, that this adds no value being in a heritage zone. And it adds no value to the staff time that was spent on working with it. It adds no value to the development team that they were in a heritage zone. And it adds no value to the community association, which considered it a planning committee meeting as much as a heritage committee meeting, but generally, you know, it was a planning issue, not a heritage issue. So I don't see any reason to object to this particular application. However, I do want to just indicate that it is a perfect example of why I move the motion that will come up shortly.
Thank you for those comments. Of course, there are opinions and there are facts. And the fact is that we're dealing with a heritage permit for 267 O'Connor Street that's before us under the Ontario Heritage Act, which is within, of course, the jurisdiction of this municipal council. Member Legault.
Yes, I'd like to just respond to Member Bournes. I think it's hard for me to hear what you are saying coming from someone who works in conservation and knowing how hard these people work to protect our cultural resources in this city. And I think it's just extremely disrespectful to you to be belittling their work to this level. So I would encourage you to educate yourself as to what it means to be a heritage conservation district. Also, what it means to get designation. Perhaps go into an architectural office and see what kind of work people are doing, because it's far more complex than you make it seem. And these people are highly educated, and they work hard. They work hard for a good reason, and they're here to help us have a rich city full of multiple layers of stories. And I personally strongly value this, and I'm proud. I'm proud of the work that this city does, and I would just I would really encourage you to open your eyes to this as well.
Appreciate the comments. I believe that the motion for the relief sculpture had passed on consent. The next item is the main report, recorded vote, please, Committee Coordinator.
Member Quinn,
No.
Councillor Kelly,
Yes.
Councillor Troster,
No.
Member Legault,
No.
Councillor Leeper,
Yes.
Member Bournes, Vice Chair Plant,
No.
and Chair King.
Yes.
4 yeas, 4 nays.
So based on our rules, the motion fails on division.
Doesn't it refer to council?
Yes.
Decision? Committee tomorrow as well.
So this item still goes to Planning Committee for consideration.
Sorry, I think I misunderstood this motion. I thought it was the motion for this basically to be abolished, like the.
No.
Okay.
That
I would like this to continue to go forward as presented. So
at the will of committee, can we reconsider Member Legault's vote?
Yes.
I would like this to move forward. Yes, I would not like Brian Bourne's. I thought he was presenting a new motion.
So Member Bourne's motion is associated with another item that
Okay.
agenda. This is just dealing specifically with this heritage permit.
Okay, yes, I would like to proceed.
So you've changed your vote with the will of the committee.
Five yeas, 3 nays.
5 yeas, 3 nays. So the report will be submitted to council on April 22nd, 2026. We move on to the next item, heritage permit for 237 Clemo Avenue. We'll receive a presentation from staff.
That was fun.
Good morning. Yep, so this is the presentation for the heritage permit at 237 Clemo Avenue. And next slide, please. Just wait for the French slide.
Which slide do you want?
And if we could go back 1 on the English, please. Thank you. So this property is located at 237 Clemo Avenue within the Clemo-Monkland Driveway and Linden Terrace Heritage Conservation District. We're located mid-block between Lyon and Percy on the north side of Clemo Avenue. And this property contains a 2-story house built around 1960, which is identified in the HCD plan as a non-contributing property. And next slide, please. So this proposal is for demolition of the existing property or the existing house and replacement with a new single detached house. You can see on the screen here proposed elevations of the front and one of the sides. And next slide, please, as well. So as you can see, it's a 2-story design clad predominantly in red brick with a stone veneer at the base foundation level. And next slide, please. So here you can see a elevation or a rendering of the proposed design in the context of Clemo Avenue. So you can see the landscape design is relatively simple and keeps the sort of predominant characteristics of the district and the existing lot. In addition to the siting and overall scale of the proposed building being very compatible and similar to that of the surrounding properties. And next slide, please. Just quickly here, you can see a setback analysis, which was provided by the applicant, just providing a overview of the proposed footprint of the proposed house in the context of its neighbors within the HCD. So you can see that the actual proposed footprint is very similar and compatible with the district itself. And next slide, please. In addition, here is the proposed landscape plan. So as I mentioned, this retains the existing shared driveway between 237 Clemo and its neighbor to the east, in addition to the kind of very characteristic simple lawn, which is predominant throughout this district. And next slide, please. So in terms of the relevant parts of the Clemo-Monkland HCD plan, we're looking at section 5, 8, and 9 here. So first of all, regarding demolition and relocation. So as I mentioned, this proposal is an example of a non-contributing property. Under section 5, there are very limited numbers of non-contributing properties within this Heritage Conservation District. But in instances where a proposal for demolition is proposed on a non-contributing property, it can be considered by heritage staff, provided that the new proposed development is compatible with the character of the HCD. When looking at the character of the HCD, we look predominantly to section 8 of the Heritage Conservation District Plan, which provides policies and guidelines for new construction. So the proposal meets the relevant policies and guidelines of section 8. It's highly compatible with the surrounding HCD through its siting, its footprint, its scale, and the materials used throughout the building. And then finally, section 9 speaks to landscaping, streetscape, and public realm within the Heritage Conservation District. So as shown on screen, the landscape plan really retains a lot of the existing front yard of the existing house, and matches the characteristics that are predominant throughout the Heritage Conservation District in retaining that existing shared driveway and the kind of lawn which carries through across the front yards of Clement Avenue. And next slide, please. In terms of consultation for this proposal, Councillor Menard, Heritage Ottawa, and the Glebe Community Association were notified of the application. Notice was sent out to neighbors within 60 meters of the property, and a notice sign was also installed on the property. We did have a pre-consult meeting with the applicant and a representative of the Glebe Community Association who provided feedback in addition to staff feedback. And through the written or the mailed notice and the posted sign, we did not receive any negative feedback on this proposal from neighbors. Material was also posted online on DevApps as well. And next slide, please. So staff are recommending approval of this application, so approving the demolition and new construction, in addition to delegating minor design changes to the program manager and issuing the permit with a 2-year expiry date, which are both standard for these types of applications. And next slide, please. And then in addition to our standard conditions, we are recommending one additional condition, which is just to for the applicant to work with staff to undertake some minor design revisions, just to improve the sort of compatibility and distinguishability of the new proposal from surrounding contributing buildings in the HCD. So the idea here is to just tweak it a little bit to better meet some of the guidelines of Section 8, and also kind of address the intent of Standard 11 of the Standards and Guidelines for the Conservation of Historic Places in Canada, which speaks to highlighting and promoting the distinguishability of new work in heritage contexts. And that is it for my presentation today. Happy to answer any questions, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the presentation. We did receive correspondence from Heritage Ottawa on this item, and we do have 2 registered delegations, starting with Janie Desrosiers. Good morning. Welcome to the committee, and you have 5 minutes.
Good morning. Thank you for having us. I'm Jenny Desrosiers. This is my spouse, Mark and Foster. We're the applicants. So we are just wanting to be available for questions, should there be any.
Thank you. So not speaking specifically to the item, just making yourself available for questions.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any questions for the 2 delegates? Seeing none, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. Questions for staff? And I see no hands raised. Sorry, Brian.
What had you in mind in terms of changes to the design?
So through the chair, we've left it open just so that we can work with the applicant. We discussed this condition with the applicant prior, just to give them some flexibility to kind of think about what might be appropriate. Some suggestions we've made include the addition of potentially a date stone, some tweaks to maybe the window treatment or railing treatment just to simplify them or make them more contemporary. But I think the HCD plan itself gives a lot of leeway to make that compatibility appropriate. So we've left it open-ended at this time, just so that the applicant has some flexibility there.
Thank you. So is this item carried?
Carried.
Carried. Thank you so much. So this report will be submitted to council on April 22nd, 2026. Our next item is heritage considerations for Confederation Heights. There is no presentation for this. Oh, there is? Okay. So we do have a presentation, and we do have 2 speakers on this item.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair. So we do have a presentation ready, but I'm at the will of the committee if you would like me to go through it. The registered speakers are also the owners of the property, so they're available for questions.
So is it the will of committee to have this presentation go forward? Okay, so I guess we have indication that there is question for delegation. So I'm sure everybody has reviewed the file, so we might dispense of the presentation and just move forward with delegations as they are representatives of the Canada Lands Company. And that would be Catherine Constantine as well as Michaela Kuhn. And I think that Ms. Constantine has been promoted. So Councillor Leeper, if you do have.
Oh, no, I have
Oh, you have questions for staff. Okay. So questions for the delegation. Seeing no hands raised, thank you so much for taking the time this morning. I'm sure you're going to continue to follow this agenda item. Questions for staff. Councillor Leeper.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm just interested in the mechanics of the heritage easement agreement with the owner of the property of the Sir Charles Tupper building. Can you just take me through what a heritage easement means? Is that a particular concept? Like, what does it give us the power to do? Just mechanical question.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the question. Great question. So we don't we don't often bring easements forward to this committee, but it is another tool available to municipalities under the Ontario Heritage Act. It's under Section 37 of the Heritage Act, and it works similarly to an individual designation to recognize places of cultural heritage value and protect them into the future. But the way it works is that it's a contract, an agreement between the city and the owner that we would need to negotiate the different terms and details of. It would be registered on title, just like an individual designation. But in this case, it allows for some ability to negotiate those terms alongside a development proposal, which I think in this case for the Sir Charles Tupper building, we're working quite closely with CLC on this towards a shared understanding of the cultural heritage value, but they need some more time basically to investigate retention options and reuse. And so this provides some flexibility to do that, more time for those conversations.
Okay, so we would have an easement over their property requiring, for example, the retention of certain heritage elements or things like that?
Yeah, that's right. I think it would include similar components like a statement of value, outline the attributes that we would be looking for conservation of, potentially some conservation design guidelines that we would work to, or principles that we could look at including that would inform future development there.
Okay, and why would we go down an easement path versus a designation path or a Part 4 path?
Yeah, so I think, thanks for the question. It really comes down to that flexibility piece. There's new restrictions under the Heritage Act for a Part 4 in terms of timing and bringing forward bylaws, listing on the register in advance. And so this easement allows for those conversations to still happen without, needing to keep those timeline pieces in mind.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you so much. Are there any other questions for staff? Seeing none, is this item carried?
Carried.
Carried. Thank you so much. So this report will be submitted to council on April 22nd, 2026. Our next item is Ontario Heritage Act changes, implementation update. There is a presentation on this item from staff.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. It's not often I get almost, an hour and a half into the meeting and I've said nothing. So, but you don't get off without hearing from me today. So here I am going to provide the committee today with an update on all of our work post Bill 23. So you've all heard Bill 23 1,000 times by now. But this was the major changes that came into effect for the Ontario Heritage Act on January 1st, 2023. Next slide, please. So this somewhat complicated timeline, I won't go through it in detail, and I cannot take credit for the graphic design. My younger, much more adept staff are responsible for this with my slight amendments. So just to give you a sense, so Bill 23 came into effect January 1st, 2023. Over the period of the last 2.5, almost 3 years, staff have been working to figure out how to best implement this. We brought forward a major report in June of 2023 that kind of gave an overview of the approach, which included strategic removal of some properties from the register, an HCD work plan, an approach for how we were going to triage the 4,600 properties that we had on our register. And then in sort of the beginning of 2024, we started through that strategic removals approach, which was our kind of made in Ottawa approach to the Heritage Register. Unfortunately, in June of 2024, that little loophole that we were exploiting got closed through a further amendment of the Ontario Heritage Act. So we stopped removing properties from the register at that point in time. So where we are now is this report where we are looking at how we move forward to January 1st, 2027, which is that looming deadline of when we have to remove the remaining properties from the city's Heritage Register, and they will lose any interim control or interim demolition control that they have. Next slide, please. So just to give you a sense of what the future state is, all remaining properties are removed from the register on January 1st, 2027. This includes properties that may end up being designated in the future under Part 4 and Part 5 of the Heritage Act. For the city, we expect that this will be approximately 2,500 properties by the end of the year of the 4,600 that we did have listed on our Heritage Register. So once that register is effectively empty, which it will be as of the beginning of next year, the only properties that we can list on that register are properties that have never been listed before. And that is for the next 5 years. So anything that is currently listed will not be able to be relisted until 2032, assuming that the legislation stays the way it is today. We anticipate as a result of that, there will be few listings. We may have strategic listings like if there's a federal property that's being disposed of that was never listed before. So for instance, committee may remember the property that you just approved for designation, 1500 Bronson. That one we just listed on the Heritage Register a couple of months ago in order to allow for the designation to occur because there were planning applications. So just to be very clear, there will be very significant limitations on designation going forward when there is a development application. So that includes a zoning bylaw amendment, an official plan amendment, or a plan of subdivision. Next slide, please. So just to give you two kind of scenarios to see how it works. So scenario one is a formally listed property. So this is as of next year. If we have a property that today is listed and it comes off the register on January 1st, 2027, this is the next step. We must either issue a notice of intention to designate prior to a planning application being deemed complete, or we are restricted from designating the property forever. So even if the applicant agrees, the owner agrees, there are significant restrictions in the act that mean that we cannot wait. So in the past, and we still get this question from developers from time to time who are amenable to designation, but would like to not have to deal with the heritage permit process or whatever, and we would wait and designate it after the development was done. We can't do that anymore. We have to kind of rush. So the risk is obviously an expedited process, less time to work with owners. It's reactionary, lots of potential conflict. Is going to require ad hoc meetings of this committee if that's the road we go down. Scenario two is a little simpler, but still a bit challenging. So that's a property that's never been listed before. Again, there's not going to be a lot of these, but the city must list the property on the Heritage Register prior to the prescribed event. So the prescribed event is the deeming complete of the Planning Act application in order to preserve the city's ability to designate once that planning application occurs. So these are only as it relates to planning applications. If there's no planning applications, we can continue to proceed as we have been proceeding. We can designate properties with or without owner support. But if there are development applications, we will be severely restricted in our ability to do so. So we may have to look at other tools like heritage easement agreements. So those are not subject to the same restrictions as individual designations under the Ontario Heritage Act. Next slide, please. So that gives you kind of the future state and the big risks. The report recommendations are to receive an update, which I'll give you sort of a bit of number crunching on the Heritage Register review, approve the creation of the new City of Ottawa Heritage Inventory, provide direction in advance to remove those remaining properties as of the end of the year, just acknowledging the election cycle and the bit of time crunch there may be with meetings at the end of the year, and approve updates to and receive updates for the HCD work plan going forward. Next slide, please. So the Heritage Register review. So the first recommendation of the report is to receive this update. When Bill 23 came into effect, as I mentioned, there were approximately 4,600 properties listed in Ottawa. We had the largest Heritage Register in the province as a result of a very comprehensive citywide heritage inventory that was completed between 2016 and 2020. BHC and Council approved an approach to reviewing the properties on the list in spring of 2023, which included a two-pronged approach of individual designation and a renewed focus on heritage conservation districts. This slide provides a high-level summary of the work completed to date and future areas of focus identified by staff. So in terms of Part 4 individual designations, 833 properties of that 4,600 were identified as potential candidates. Staff have brought forward 71 designations in that 3-year period, which represents approximately 25% increase in the overall number of designated properties in the city since the program began in the late 1970s. So a significant amount of work in a short time period with the support of this committee and will of long meetings. An additional 95 properties are in progress for potential designation. Approximately 80 properties have been reviewed and determined to not meet the criteria, and we are not proceeding with designation, excuse me. There are more detailed numbers in the staff report. I'm going to go into a little bit more, but if you look at table 1 and 2 in the staff report, you can get a full breakdown of how things have been screened. Future areas of focus that we are going to work on is the rural area in consultation with the ward councillors and chair of ARAC, wards 15 and 17. So these being seen as the kind of underrepresented urban wards in terms of the large number of historic buildings and the relatively lower number of designations compared to wards 12, 13, and 14. And then modernism. So you just saw a property, the former CBC building, and we will be looking to do more work on modernism going forward as it's a big gap in the program. Next slide, please. So just to give you, I'm not going to go through this in detail, but just to give you a sense, we have taken the 4,600 and we've kind of screened them into a number of buckets. So 1,600 approximately were removed as part of those strategic delistings. There were 833 that were identified for potential Part 4. That's the ones I was just talking about. We've had a bunch of demolition, well, not a bunch, but 16 demolitions or notices of intent to demolish. Approximately 820 of these properties are located in future HCD study areas. So they will hopefully, or some of them at least, will be designated under Part 5 of the Heritage Act going forward. And then we have an additional 30 that are in HCD feasibility assessment areas, which leaves us with 1,300 properties to review by the end of the year. That will not be in terms of reviewing them and bringing them forward to this committee, but it will be screening them to determine what the approach is for them. So we will be saying, okay, we think these ones should be designated. These ones are just going to come off and we don't care about them anymore. So we have, that's what's left of the 4,600 to sort of continue to sort through by the end of the year. Please don't add up the numbers. I'm a planner, not a mathematician. Next slide, please. So recommendation 2 of this report is to create a new heritage inventory. So this new heritage inventory will not have any status under the Heritage Act. It's basically going back to the way we did things before we had a heritage register, which was called the Heritage Reference List at the time. It's basically a monitoring tool. So the Heritage Register today fulfills kind of three functions: monitoring, recognition, and demolition control. And it's our contention and recommendation to council that a new heritage inventory that still does two of these three things is an appropriate tool to recognize these places of importance. Just because the province has said through the Ontario Heritage Act that we have to remove these properties from our register, it does not mean that they no longer have significance to the community. And so we think that, you know, a large portion of what we do is about celebration and recognition of important places. It's not just about controlling demolition. And so staff are recommending the creation of a new tool, which will be publicly accessible on the city's website and in various ways to share the information we have. We have a lot of data on a lot of these properties, and to alert property owners of the city's potential interest in their property as a heritage property, rather than sort of springing it on people at the last second. Next slide, please. So we are still kind of working out the details of this, but we're thinking it will include properties in the following categories. So future HCD study areas, we would include the properties within those areas. High significance candidates for designation, so that would be things that we think should be designated under Part 4 of the Heritage Act. Federal heritage properties, we are seeing our federal counterparts disposing of properties as of late, and having them flagged is helpful for us to consider designation or listing of those properties at that time. And then any other properties that might be worthy of monitoring and recognition. The recommended timeline for this is that staff will develop the tool over the remainder of 2026, once we've sorted through those remaining 1,300 properties. And then we would return to BHC in Q2 of next year with the initial list and terms of reference for how properties will be added and removed, what's included, that sort of thing, for approval of committee and council. Next slide, please. Recommendation 3 of the report is an administrative recommendation, but basically to recommend that Built Heritage Committee recommend that council remove the remaining properties listed under Section 27 of the Heritage Act from the register as of January 1st, or a date as prescribed for the purpose of Section 27 of the Heritage Act, whichever comes later. I say this because the date has been extended once already. We are not hearing any indication that it will be extended again, but I know there are several municipalities around the province who have been seeking that extension from the provincial government. So we've just put this caveat in the instance that the deadline does get extended, we're able to leave the properties on the register beyond January 1st, 2027. Next slide, please. So recommendation 4 is about the HCD work plan. So as I said, we've taken a two-pronged approach to the review of the Heritage Register, and it's been a renewed focus on designation, both under Part 4 and Part 5. All the HCD feasibility assessments that were directed in 2024 are now complete. The final one is anticipated to come forward to this committee next month. And so we are now ready to provide a bit of an update on what we envision as the next steps for HCD work plan going forward. We are also recommending through this report a new feasibility assessment area for Chinatown. This was identified through the Bank Street HCD plan update, the Centertown West boundary discussion, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later, and through the register review, which had a focus on program diversification and telling more diverse stories of our city. Next slide, please. So this slide provides the staff recommended prioritization of upcoming HCD studies based on current council direction, threat, and other factors. I recognize that this appears to be a very long time horizon, with the last study not starting until 2033. But HCD studies are significant pieces of work that require dedicated staff resources and significant community consultation. It's important for us to be transparent about the anticipated time horizon for the projects to ensure that community members and council are aware. This work plan is based on existing staff resources and workload. So of course that could change depending on how things play out over the next several years. Further details on kind of work plan beyond 2026 would be brought forward as part of future term of council work plans. So at this point, this is just for information. We have direction to begin the Centertown West and the Beaverbrook HCD studies this year. Those will be getting underway in the next month or two. And we will be bringing forward the Bank Street HCD plan and the Golden Triangle HCD to this committee before the summer break. So we have two big ones that are kind of wrapping up, and then two more large ones that are starting, and then the next batch will follow on as resources permit. Next slide, please. So the Centertown West HCD boundary, this has been added on because we do need committee and council endorsement for the study area boundary as part of the study process. So committee approved an initial study for this area in 2024. Since that time, the CCA has been engaged in a very in-depth consultation with its members, including a lot of walking tours, block by block. Councillor Troster will tell you about coming out in her pajamas. Block by block in this area to determine the community values for this potential Heritage Conservation District study. In February of this year, the Community Association submitted a request to staff with the area that's sort of shown in orange on this slide as their proposed HCD study area. We reviewed it. We went out and walked it ourselves again and had discussions with the CCA. We went and met with the CCA, and we are now proposing a slightly amended boundary, which the CCA is in support of, which is outlined in black. So we have recommended removal of a couple of the blocks that they have recommended to include, because we don't think that there's enough heritage fabric there to merit inclusion in the study area. So it's the last two blocks at the north end, and then, the northwest end, and also the block of Lisgar between Lyon and Kent at the northeast corner. So staff are recommending this as the study area boundary for the study that will commence in the next couple of months. And we just are seeking council endorsement for this boundary. Next slide, please. So just to sort of wrap up, the recommendations are to receive receive for information, the update on the review of the city's heritage register, approve the creation of the new City of Ottawa Heritage Inventory, remove the remaining properties from the heritage register effective January 1st, and receive the updates to the HCD work plan going forward. And I'm happy to answer any questions the committee might have. I know it's a bit of a dense presentation and report.
Thank you so much, number one, for the report itself, the presentation that you've provided, but also for the hard work that's been undertaken to deal with the reports and the impending changes and the ongoing changes from the provincial government. We understand the pressures that creates on our small and mighty heritage staff, and we appreciate the work that's being undertaken. But we do have a delegation on this item, but before we hear from the delegation, there are a couple of motions that have been drafted for this item, and I will ask Vice Chair Plante to read those out once we get them on the screen.
Happy to do so. Whereas the city's official plan enables the designation of groups of buildings and areas of the city as Heritage Conservation District under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act, whereas Heritage Conservation Districts should include significant groupings of historical buildings, therefore be it resolved that the Built Heritage Committee recommend council approve that staff be directed to consider the following when establishing HCD boundaries. Exclusion of significant groups of non-heritage properties. Not requiring the inclusion of both sides of the street within an HCD where properties across the street do not meet the qualifications of heritage zone. That's it. Thanks.
And then there is my motion as well.
Great.
So we'll just wait for that to come up on the screen.
Whereas the City of Ottawa has adopted a new comprehensive zoning bylaw, which will guide land use, built form, and development across the city, whereas Heritage Conservation District are governed and approved by HCD plans under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act, which provide direction on heritage-sensitive form and character. And whereas residents and stakeholders have raised questions regarding how HCD plans will continue to apply and interact with the new zoning bylaw, particularly following the removal of a former heritage overlay, and whereas clear, accessible, and consistent information is essential to support transparency, public understanding, and confidence in the development review process within HCDs. Therefore, be it resolved that Built Heritage Committee recommend Council approve that staff be directed to prepare and publish a heritage and zoning bylaw FAQ resource, and be it further resolved that the FAQ include, at minimum, an explanation of how HCD plans continue to govern heritage sensitive form and character and how they operate alongside zoning provisions, a description of the internal review process staff follow when development applications are submitted within HCDs, and clear information on what residents can expect in terms of notification, transparency, and opportunities for public input. And be it further resolved that staff circulate a copy of the final document to the Built Heritage Committee as part of the implementation of the new zoning bylaw. Merci.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair. And we do have a delegation on this item, Jack Hanna from the Centertown Community Association. Thank you for joining us this morning, and you have 5 minutes.
Okay. So I am the chair of the Heritage Committee of the Centertown Community Association. I want to speak to item 5A, an updated boundary of the Centertown West HCD study area. The CCA strongly supports staff's proposal for this tentative HCD boundary. We are not alone. You have in hand letters of support for the staff recommendation from the Historical Society of Ottawa and Heritage Ottawa. We believe the proposed HCD will be far more than just a collection of the grandest Victorian red brick houses. This HCD also will tell the story of a community that goes back to the early days of Ottawa and continues right up to the present time. This HCD will contain a great diversity of types of heritage housing. Besides the Victorian red brick houses, there are working class front gable cottages, a great variety of row houses, and many heritage apartment buildings. This community always has been very diverse, and that was made possible by the diversity of housing stock. This variety of heritage housing is very much in evidence today, and because of that, because of the diversity of housing types still very much in use right now, the community today is home to a great diversity of people. The heritage streetscapes, so very intact and well kept, are much more than just beautiful or interesting artifacts from the past. This built heritage is the foundation that enables and defines the community character of today, just as it has throughout the past 130 years. The Centertown Community Association strongly supports the proposal before you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your delegation. I see you have questions from Councillor Troster.
Hi, Jack. I just wanted to thank you for all your hard work on this. I've lived in Centertown for 16 years, and I live in the west part of Centertown that you're considering, that's being considered for designation and for a study. I would say my house it was built in the 80s. It's non-contributing, but we love the diversity of buildings, the character, it's Centertown is not a cookie cutter neighborhood, and that's a heritage that we're trying to preserve. So, and even with the infill that's been happening, the character still remains, and finding that balance between new development and heritage properties, I think, is the essential Centertown question. So I want to thank you for the work you're doing. Very supportive of it. That's really it. Oh, I just wondered if you had any comments on Member Bournes's motion.
I believe there's a part of the motion is to say that both sides of the street should not be required to be in an HCD. There is no such requirement at this time.
Okay, thank you. And then the issue of designating of areas that have contributing buildings. I mean, this is pretty standard with any heritage area, but I just was wondering, I know we discussed this at length at a previous meeting, but I'm just wondering about your feedback.
Well, I'm a bit confused by that. I know that in developing our proposal, we worked very closely with city staff. We kept them very close. I mean, we've been working this for half a decade, and we kept Leslie Collins, Mackenzie Kim very close. We wanted to know what they thought about all of our thinking. We asked their advice. We asked them to come present to us and talk to us about various aspects of heritage districts. And every time we had an idea, we ran it past them. I think we went to them 5 times saying, what is your opinion, your professional opinion of adding this area in the district, or that area, or this street, or that street? And we always worked very closely with them, and it was very fruitful for us. We think we have a very strong proposal. We want a really good, strong heritage district, and we think we got it.
Thank you very much for everything.
Thank you so much for your delegation. I don't see any other raised hands. We do have Linda Hode from Heritage Ottawa also registered to delegate. Thank you for joining us. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning. Nice to see you all. I wanted to add Heritage Ottawa's thanks to the staff for the work they have done over the past number of years under considerable pressure, and for this very thorough report, which outlines what they have done and what we're facing in the future. And that's really why I'm here. It's pretty terrifying when you read what we're losing. We're gaining an inventory, which we certainly endorse, and we'll be happy to work with staff on implementing. I'm particularly interested in the public access to the inventory via the various, what do we call them, online resources that were mentioned in the report. I'm a big fan, as you may know, of Geo Ottawa. Apparently, I'm the only one who uses Geo Ottawa in the whole, at least for heritage in the city of Ottawa, but I will not back down. In fact, I think there's new information available recently. Somebody's been working on it. The other reason I wanted to speak to you is the fact that the responsibility for watching out for heritage buildings is going to have to be spread more widely, since the staff are not going to be able to, we don't have the tools like the register that they have had in the past. And I suggest in the comments that we submitted that Heritage Ottawa is prepared to work with staff and to work on spreading the word throughout the community of the dangers that we now face. I think it's very important. We will probably have to contact staff and figure out how is this information going to be pushed out there. We'll be relying also on the members of the Built Heritage Committee and councillors as well, who are concerned about heritage in their communities. I don't think, I was a bit surprised at how drastic the situation is, and I'm fairly well informed. So I think there are a lot of people out there who are going to find this very shocking. And we do need to, I think people are supportive of heritage. I think we need to work with the communities, with other organizations, to try to rally support and indicate to people how they can best preserve the heritage in their communities. Thank you.
Councillor Troster.
Thank you for being here, for being such an incredible guardian of our heritage. I'm going to ask you a question I'm going to ask staff, because staff were operating with a loophole that's now been closed. So they removed a whole bunch of properties from the list that apparently cannot be re-added now, correct? I see Leslie nodding her head. Are there ones that you're concerned about that were removed in, you know, I'm concerned about the situation that we removed them thinking we can add them back, and now there's no chance to add them back. Do you
Just make sure you have your mic.
They will go on the inventory, I assume, which at least means that there is a list that people can look. It's not the same, but information about what buildings the city has picked on or has established value, and to have access to the information that they've already gathered. And there's a lot of it. I mean, I have used Geo Ottawa to check on the Hintonburg properties. It's very helpful, and it's a good start to a request for designation or other means of preserving and protecting our heritage. But it's definitely not what we've been used to.
No, it's pretty wild. It's a pretty wild change in policy, as we're seeing from this provincial government on many different files. So I want to thank you for your work, and I also want to thank my community association because they were able to come forward with a list of priority properties that they wanted to see designated, and that really helped staff with their work. So to maybe ignite the power of community associations to be really watching and communicating with staff on priority properties, I think could be a good strategy. But again, it's relying on volunteers to do this work. And I'm very thankful that you do it. And it's really a shame that you need to. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your delegation. I just also wanted to echo Councillor Troster's comments in terms of the contributions of Heritage Ottawa and a number of volunteers throughout the city focused on heritage issues. Your inputs are important and they're impactful, and they do really translate to policy changes at the city. We appreciate that. We also appreciate the commentary that's necessary about the impact of the change. So we appreciate that work. We always want to acknowledge that work that's being done because it's being done by volunteers, and we appreciate your efforts on an ongoing basis. So thank you so much for your delegation. At this time, seeing no other delegations, comments and questions to staff. Councillor Troster.
Hi. Okay, so I'm going to ask you the same question, and you'll have to clarify this if I'm not understanding it well. So you removed a whole bunch of properties from the registry thinking we can just add them back in at some point. Do you have regrets about any that you've removed? Are those a lost cause forever? Can you never designate them again? It's just a little fuzzy to me.
Thank you for the question. It's probably fuzzy because it is a bit complicated. So the properties that were removed from the register were part of a strategy whereby we had found a way within the Heritage Act that we could strategically add properties back on as needed. There was never any intention to blanket add everything back to the register. We were trying to sort of move towards that compliance and the idea that the province had about time-limited registration as a tool, as a sort of stepping stone to designation. So I don't think that there's necessarily a regret because all of those properties would be coming off the register at the end of this year anyway. So, we just took them off early. Have there been a couple that have been lost? Probably, but nothing major. We've been lucky. We've got 8 months to go, but they would have all come off at the end of this year anyway. So we will be in that position for all 4,600 as of January.
Okay, so is it like a use it or lose it thing right now? Like if you remove them, they can never be designated again?
No, so only if there's if there's a planning application, correct. We have to either designate before the planning application occurs, or we can never designate forever. If there's no planning applications, we can continue to proceed as normal.
Thank you for the clarification. Yep. Of course, it's clear as mud when the legislation is coming at us really fast. So thank you.
Councillor Leeper.
Thank you very much, Chair. So I've got two different questions. The first of which I think I'll ask about Member Borns's motion. It seems relatively actually innocuous in the language. Staff be directed to consider the following when establishing HCD boundaries, and you're familiar with the two bullets there. Is this a particularly significant departure from your usual MO?
No, I would say that this is something that we already do. The goal of creating Heritage Conservation District study areas is to create areas with the highest concentration of historic buildings. The one thing I will say is, and it would depend on what the intention of the motion is, there has been discussion in the past over creating kind of holes in the middle of an HCD. So if you think about it as like an overlay, thinking of it like a piece of Swiss cheese, that is not something staff would support because part of the goal of a heritage conservation district is to manage change. So if a building is demolished, there are impacts of a new building on the site and its design. So in terms of limiting the scope of an HCD to the highest concentration of historic buildings, absolutely, that is something we are already doing. If the intention is to create kind of a Swiss cheese approach, that is not something that staff would support.
But do you consider that this motion would require you to
No, we
pursue
don't.
that Swiss cheese approach? You would still have the
We
flexibility.
can certainly implement the motion as written.
Okay. And I'll noodle that over the next minute or two. The second question, the Island Park Drive Heritage Conservation District is 7th in line, I think, if I count these up properly in terms of priority. When realistically could members of the community expect that HCD would get underway?
On the slide, I have predicted it as 2033 as the start time. That's based on existing workload, staff resources, et cetera. And the HCD work plan, sort of as it's written, has been sort of prioritized in order to provide transparency to the community, because I know communities are very eager to get these projects done. But also to kind of prioritize where we see the highest level of threat and sort of the importance of the area. So we've got, Beaverbrook and Centertown West have been on the books for many years. So those ones are ready to go. After that, we've suggested that Sandy Hill, which is something that has a very hodgepodge kind of set of heritage rules and different kinds of designations, needs to be relooked at in the absence of the heritage overlay and in the changes to the, removal of the listing process. There are many, many listed properties. That's a very big project. That's, there's probably 1,000 properties within that area that need to be reviewed. And then the Rideau Canal area, which is, a priority of the official plan as a Rideau Canal special district. And then the remainder have been prioritized based on when they were received.
Okay. If members of the community wanted to see that accelerated, I'm just trying to figure out what the paths are to acceleration. It would be open at some point for a councillor to, like the opportunities here today, for me to move a motion to say, nope, prioritize this one instead. And I would either have or I would not the support of my colleagues around this table. And I presume there would be an opportunity at the beginning of the next term of council to try to reprioritize these as well. There is the potential that heritage staff could get some kind of an infusion of resources to allow you to work more quickly, or we wait. What about the community research function? Like, I know you've had some very productive collaborations with members of the community who have tried to do a lot of the groundwork for you. Is there an opportunity for community members to contribute more of the research, more of the policy muscle on this to try to get this accelerated?
I think that's something we could explore, but I think at the end of the day, the city staff have to be able to make a professional recommendation to council on this from a planning perspective, from a heritage planning perspective. And we need to be the ones who can stand up at the OLT and vouch for the research and vouch for the boundaries and those recommendations. So yes, the input of the community in terms of the background work, the legwork that has been done, for instance, for Island Park is extremely valuable, but at some point in time, I have to assign someone from my team to lead the project. And with all of the other kind of competing priorities right now, this is our best guess of timelines. As you mentioned, that could be reprioritized by a number of things. It could be through a future term of council work plan, which is why this is just provided kind of for information at this point. Through resources, there is an opportunity potentially to do some of this work through consultant dollars, although we have had better success, honestly, at doing them internally over the last number of years. And then I think the other potential thing to reassess would be if there's a big spate of demolitions or, there's a change in the risk factor. So this is based on sort of how we see things today. There's lots of things that could change that over time.
Okay. It's I know the news will be disappointing to some of the advocates for that Island Park HCD. It is what it is. All right, thank you.
Member Borns.
Thanks very much. I understand why the Centertown heritage area couldn't be re-examined, given the the provincial approach to heritage conservation, and so adjusting the boundaries of that was was problematic. If we look at future ones, when we look at developments that have been developed in the 70s, the 80s, 90s, and they're individually owned by condominium corporations and so on, why would we include those in a heritage zone, and how might we treat the applications?
The Ontario Heritage Toolkit is published by the province of Ontario, the Ministry of Culture. And it talks about what the goal, what a heritage conservation district is and why you would do it and how you establish boundaries. And so the boundaries are established for a heritage conservation district through that rigorous study. So the boundary that we have in front of the committee today for Centertown West is a boundary for the study. It wouldn't necessarily be the same boundary that would come forward for an HCD down the road. But the main reason to go specifically to your question, the toolkit says, a heritage district may be comprised of a concentration of historic buildings, but it may also include more contemporary buildings. And those buildings, we would assess them through the study process, determine what their value is. If they have no value, they may be assigned as non-contributing. But we know that buildings get demolished. We know that sites get redeveloped. We know that there's fires. We know that, for various reasons, things change. And that's good. We want things to change. The goal of an HCD is to manage that change, to ensure that the concentration of historic buildings that give an area its special character, despite maybe a 1970s apartment building that maybe isn't part of that story, that character is maintained to the best of our ability. And so they would be treated, I would say, more loosely in terms of demolition, if somebody were to propose demolition or alteration. But we include guidance for property owners and for committee and council to look to in ensuring that any changes to the properties are compatible with the overall established, defined, council-approved character and heritage attributes of the district. So that's why these things are approved by council in terms of what is the character. We define the character in an HCD. And if a property doesn't meet the character, then maybe it can be demolished. But what goes in its place could detrimentally affect the kind of established character that council has.
What if somebody just wanted to paint the woodwork on?
We don't regulate paint color.
And windows?
I mean, it's hard to speak to a hypothetical heritage conservation district plan. We have to study the area and determine because every plan has different policies. In some plans, yes, we do regulate windows even in non-contributing buildings, simply because, in a low-rise residential neighborhood, the window choices could impact the character of the neighborhood. In a more urban neighborhood, I'd say, like Centertown, we have excluded things like windows from non-contributing buildings in terms of its regulation. So it really is, it's highly dependent on the proposed district.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I'd like to exercise my own prerogative as chair to speak to both motions that are before us before we proceed to a vote. I must say I have significant concerns about the Borns member that is before us, and I will definitely put that on record. I want to acknowledge the intent behind Member Borns' motion, ensuring that the heritage conservation districts reflect genuine heritage value is a goal I believe we all share. However, I can't support this motion as written, and I really do want to explain why. The motion's framing that HCDs should include only historically significant groupings of historic buildings, in my estimation, and I think we heard that also from staff, misunderstands the fundamental purpose of Heritage Conservation District designation under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act. HCDs are not simply collections of individual significant buildings. They protect the character of a place, the streetscape, the rhythm of development, the spatial relationships between properties. A non-heritage building within a district boundary may be entirely unremarkable on its own, and yet contribute critically to the scale, massing, and continuity of a heritage area. Excluding it doesn't simplify the district, it undermines it. I'm particularly troubled by the second bullet, which would allow staff to exclude the opposite sides of a street from an HCD where those properties don't individually meet heritage qualifications. Streets are experienced as a whole. A heritage streetscape doesn't exist only on one sidewalk. The visual relationship between both sides of a street, sightlines, massing, and the sense of enclosure is central to why we designate areas in the first place. Allowing asymmetric boundaries as a matter of policy would set a troubling precedent and could leave heritage areas visually exposed to incompatible development on the opposing frontage. The provision could also be exploited. Properties on the wrong side of a boundary become immediately more attractive for intensification and not necessarily in ways sensitive to the adjacent heritage area. The Heritage Act changes, of course, are still being implemented, as we heard, and staff are actively working through the implications of provincial amendments that have significantly altered the heritage designation landscape across Ontario, directing staff to embed these boundary criteria into their methodology before that implementation work is complete, before public engagement is complete, and before we understand those full implications, in my estimation, puts the cart before the horse. It's also very important to understand the impacts of present consultation exercises that have been undertaken. And I think we heard about a certain ward councillor who even jumped out in her pajamas to listen to constituents and to work with the heritage community.
Yes, I was taking out my compost and Jack Hanna and a group of volunteers were outside my driveway. It was lovely, actually, but they have now seen me in my pajamas.
But obviously there is an ongoing approach. There is a methodology, and it's important that we ensure that there is continued public engagement through the process. I'd also raise a broader equity concern. Heritage conservation districts in older, lower income or mixed use neighborhoods often contain properties in varying states of integrity, some historic, some not. A policy that allows significant exclusions based on a narrow definition of heritage qualification risks systematically disadvantaging the designation of districts and communities that don't have the pristine heritage streetscapes of wealthier neighborhoods. Heritage conservation should be an inclusive tool, and this motion as written could make it less so. What we are being asked to do here is preemptively constrain staff's professional judgment on district boundaries before the broader implementation process has concluded, and to do so in a way that prioritizes exclusion over the contextual, holistic approach that has always been the strength of Part 5 designations. I would urge members to defeat that specific motion and to allow staff to complete their implementation work before we began narrowing the methodology. In terms of my motion, I also wanted to provide some brief comments with the indulgence of the committee, since it's not typical for chairs to move motions, but I wish to do so in my capacity as a member. I'm bringing my motion forward today because residents and heritage stakeholders in Ottawa deserve clear, accessible answers, especially as we navigate a significant transition in our planning framework. work. As members of this committee know, the city recently adopted a new comprehensive zoning bylaw with a tremendous amount of heavy lifting from the Planning and Housing Committee. So definitely want to give kudos to our colleague, Councillor Leeper, for all that work. And with it came important changes to how heritage areas are governed, including the removal of the former heritage overlay. Heritage conservation districts remain governed by their approved HCD plans under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act. That hasn't changed, but what has changed is the broader planning context those plans now operate within, and that's created understandable confusion. I've heard from residents and stakeholders in my ward and beyond who are asking, what does this mean for their neighborhood? How will heritage rules interact with the new zoning? Who do I call if a development application comes forward near a designated heritage property? These are reasonable questions, and right now it's too hard to find a single clear place to get those answers. This motion asks staff to do something targeted and practical, prepare and publish a heritage and the new zoning bylaw FAQ resource on the website. At minimum, the FAQ would address three things: how HCD plans continue to govern heritage-sensitive form and character, and how they operate alongside the new zoning provisions, the internal review processes staff follow when development applications are submitted within HCDs, and what residents can expect in terms of notification, transparency, and opportunities for public input. And finally, the motion asks that once complete, staff circulate that document back to this committee so that we can see it, evaluate it, and ensure it's doing a good job. Heritage districts work best when people understand the rules and trust the process. Transparency isn't a luxury, it's foundational to public confidence in heritage conservation. I believe this is a low-cost, high-value step. We're not asking for a policy overhaul. We're asking for a plain language document that helps residents understand how the system works. And that's a reasonable expectation, and it's one I hope that this committee can help deliver. So I will be asking committee support on the motion that I am recommending. I believe there are two items before us. The motion from Member Bournes, recorded vote, please.
Member Quinn,
No.
Councillor Kelly,
No.
Councillor Troster,
No.
Member Legault,
No.
Councillor Leeper,
No.
Member Bournes.
Yes.
Vice Chair Plant,
No.
and Chair King.
No.
7 nays, 1 yay.
And then on the King motion, does that require a recorded vote or?
Carried.
Carried. Thank you so much. So this item, as amended, will be submitted to council on April 22nd, 2026.
Okay. No, we need to vote on the item.
Oh, sorry. And yes, sorry about that. We do need to vote on the report as amended. Carried. Thank you so much. So the report will be submitted to council on April 22nd, 2026. There are no in-camera items. Are there any notices of motion? Seeing none, are there any inquiries? Seeing none, is there any other business? Seeing none, we are adjourned. The next meeting of the Built Heritage Committee will be held on Tuesday, May 12th, 2026. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, Chair and staff.